side, have a good stretch, because I know you're tired. Breathe deeply, on your toes, come on, high as you can get. Oh, and the other side, turn around. There should be some shoulders in front of you. Squeeze the shoulders in front of you. Don't have shoulders in front of you. If you don't, get in a line. Let's turn around and squeeze the shoulders we just got squeezed by. All right. Okay, you can sit down.
The poor man's Tony Robbins.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at hiring. Who here hires people? Nearly everyone. Okay. And who here hires A players perfectly, no duds every time? I wish, right? So we're going to look at some tools you can use to improve the number of A players you hire and to reduce the number of duds you hire. Okay, who am I and why am I talking about this? I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years, and I've hired more than 150 staff and subcontractors over that time. And I wrote a book this year, Intuitive Leadership Mastery. And also I host a podcast, and I've interviewed more than 50 entrepreneurs about using intuition in your business. And I use my intuition when I'm hiring, and I'm going to talk to you about my experience doing that, give you some tips for that. So, what costs people who've hired duds? What does that cost you? Any people who've hired a dud? Yeah.
Sleep.
It costs you sleep. Anyone else? Time. How much time?
A lot.
All the time.
It costs you 10 days, several weeks, maybe months of heartache. What other costs? Opportunities. What opportunity did you lose because you hired a crap person?
Morale of the team.
Lost morale. Could maybe that would cause one of the team members to leave your company sooner than they would have done otherwise? Or you just get less work done? Any other costs?
Sales and brand image.
Sales? How many dollars in sales have you lost because you had bad team members?
I don't know the dollars exactly, but I know like the image was not what I wanted it to be, and probably people didn't buy because it didn't look good.
So it could have cost you $10,000, $100,000?
Yeah, let's say $10,000.
$10,000. That's quite an expensive thing from hiring the wrong person. So here are some typical costs for this was for a sales position, just in case you haven't figured out how much dollars it's costing. You know, if you're paying for ads or the time you run, direct hiring costs. If you hire someone bad, you're probably going to try and train them to make them better, or your team members will. You're going to waste money on that. You're managing someone, and you probably have to. Have you noticed that when you have A players, they don't need managing quite as much, whereas the really crappy ones, it's kind of inverse, right? You think you'd want to spend more time with the good people on your team, but you end up often spending the time with the ones who are causing you heartache. If you fire someone, you're going to have to go through time to fire them. You may have to give them severance just to keep quiet and stop suing you. Someone said it, morale, at risk of other people leaving. And then, yeah, if you have sales, you could easily, you know, if you had a person in a sales position for 6 months and they weren't performing good, easily you could be losing tens of thousands of dollars. So this is just one position, $83,000. I figured this was a position I had in my company for a sales position. That's what I figure it cost me hiring the wrong person. And I'm sure for you, you've got numbers way north of $10,000. When you're making a $10,000 or $100,000 decision in your business, are you going to use all the tools you can to make a great decision? I hope so. So, why use intuition in your hiring? You're going to save time, you're going to reduce the risk that you're going to hire some of these duds, have bad hires, and by doing that, you're going to save money for the company, you're going to improve team morale, you're going to make clients happier, you're going to make your business grow better, and also by using your intuition, I know one of the things for me when I didn't use my intuition in hiring, it used to take forever. Right? And that's probably one of the reasons I'd like hire someone who wasn't so good, because I was like tired of going through all those resumes and interviews. So by doing this, you can take action faster, which incidentally, if you're trying to hire good people, taking fast action helps you hire better people, because candidates respond to a company. It's sort of like dating, right? If you were dating someone and they took weeks to decide whether they were going to go on a second date with you, would you be as interested as if they said, hey, let's go on a second date? All right, so here's the first rule I want to give you. and some of you may already be doing this, if the person is not a hell yes for the position you're hiring for, don't hire them. If they're like a maybe, or perhaps they'll work out, or they're not great for this role, but perhaps they'll be good for something else, that's a no. If you have multiple people in your team, who here does like team interviews where you have several people interview the person? Yeah? If one of the people on your team is like not sure they're a good fit, that's a no. You need everyone to be on board with the hire. So that means you need to be ruthless, you know. And maybe you do an ad and you don't get any candidates for a fit. That means there's no hire. But you've got to remember, oh, this is going to cost me $83,000 if I screw it up. I'm not going to hire someone who's not a good fit. I'm going to go harder to get more people. Next thing to consider is, are you ready yourself and as business for this new position? Do you have space available? Do you have a clear job box, a job description of what their responsibilities are? Who do they report to? What are they not allowed to do? Have you cleared any resistance you have to hiring this position? That's something I used to not do. You know, I'd want to hire someone and then I'd sabotage the whole thing, right? Because I hadn't cleared my own resistance, my own beliefs or fears around it. And also, look at the team energy. Is the team ready to accept someone else in a new position in there? You know, you may need to adjust that, either both verbally and energetically, to have a position there, have a space there for them. Okay, when you're hiring, you want to be real clear about who you're hiring. Who is your ideal candidate for this position? Because if you're not clear, first of all, on a practical level, how are you going to write a good job ad to attract them? And energetically, how are you going to attract that right person? You know? So you want to get clear on what kind of attitude they're going to have, what kind of personality, what the culture of your company is, and how they fit into that. I think those are more important than the skills they have. You can train for skills. It's very hard to impossible to train for attitude and culture. You might list things people in the prior position really pissed you off about, right? So like if you were ticked off because people wouldn't get their tasks done when they said they would, or they were late for meetings, or they gave you the finger during stuff, or whatever the thing is, you can write down what you definitely don't want to have, and you can flip that around into what you do want to have. And then the other thing I find helps in attracting top people is put a little fun into your job description, your job ad. You know, I wrote a job ad for a writer recently. I had a line in there that said, you know, your mother is more people than just your mother thinks you could be a great writer. And I had a line in there about, you know, if you see grammar mistake in your writing, you're gonna like chew down on the cyanide capsule you've got hidden in your mouth because you can't bear to put out bad writing. So, I mean, that sounds funny, but you know, if you were an employee looking for something, you'd be like, oh yeah, they really get me. They really get that that's important to me. Okay, so two things here. First of all, we've got the what would it take question. What would it take to attract one ideal candidate? So what would it take is an intuitive way. It's a question that taps into your intuition, and you can get intuitive answers on that. And I've underlined one because when I used to hire, I'd have this idea that I'm supposed to go through all the resumes and I'm supposed to be fair and go through all the interviews. No, all you need is one ideal candidate. Okay, so when you found, if you've got like 100 resumes and like the 9th resume you come to, it's like, yes, this is the one, you don't need to go through the other 81, right? You can just go ahead and hire that person. Because your intuition is telling them, yes, telling you, yeah, that's a good fit. And whatever practical things you did too, if you did an interview, maybe you gave them a skill assessment, you're like, yes, they're good. You don't need to be ultra fair to all the candidates. So I think that is an important point that can really cut down on the time. If you're using your intuition to know that someone's a good fit, you don't have to waste time thinking, oh, is there another better candidate out there? And also by doing that, you can speed up the interview process, right? If you don't have to interview all these people, even the ones who are like B people and you're not quite sure, you can say yes to the person who's good quicker. And the people who are good are often being interviewed by other companies. The quicker you make them an offer and say yes, the more likely they are to work for you rather than get an offer from someone else and then you can't hire them. So if you're looking to attract these people, you need your job ad or however you're attracting people to stand out. So what would it take for your job ad to stand out? You can ask that what would it take question. You may get inspired ideas about how you can phrase it, whether you put an image in there, maybe you put a video in there with you speaking about what the person's going to be like. You can TLC your ad, which means add light to it, so it kind of shines more energetically at people. You can phrase the languaging speaking to them. You know, if you're advertising for an accountant, that's different from advertising for a creative person. Not that accountants can't be creative, you probably don't want a creative accountant. Business. You can use humor, you know. That I find makes you stand out. So many job ads are fucking boring, right? I mean, you probably haven't looked at job ads as with employee eyes on recently, but if you pretend you were an employee and you're looking at these things, and you read through all these job ads, 99 out of 100 of them are really boring. It's like you're going to do this boring thing, and then you're going to do this. There's no like sense of life or what Martine was talking about with culture and what your company's about. If you do that, you really are going to stand out. Okay, so you've done your job ad, you've now attracted hundreds of people who've applied, but you don't want to have to deal with hundreds of people. So how are you going to do that? So two things. Who here uses Easter egg in their job ads? Okay, so an Easter egg is like typically a simple question you insert somewhere into the job ad, and if the people don't answer that question, then you don't even go any further in it, they're eliminated. So an example, I'm running a bookkeeper ad right now, and I have some bullet points that say this is what kind of person you are. You know, you're good with numbers, blah, blah, blah. And one of those bullets says, in the first line of your cover letter, tell me how many bullets there are. Because I want to know, do they have attention to detail, and are they able to count? Do you know that more than half the people don't fill that out? Yeah, it's incredible. Or they fill it out with a count wrong. You think they would like get that right. And these kind of, that's an example of a gate. Another example of a gate would be, do they have good grammar in their cover letter? Another example might be, do they send you a thank you email after they've been interviewed? All these gates can be operated by a VA. You don't have to check those gates. You have to delegate that to someone else. And you can really winnow down the applications by doing that. The other way you can winnow down, if you've got hundreds of resumes, hundreds of applications, is you can use your intuition. Okay? You could ask yourself, what would it take for one ideal candidate to just jump out at me? Okay, and trust your intuition on that. And if you're unsure, is this my intuition or is this just like my, ego talking to me? Typically, first thoughts are intuition. If you have second guesses, that's not your intuition. Something that comes to you within the first few seconds is your intuition. Another way I use is I'll have like a list either on the screen in a spreadsheet or I'll print it out, and I'll just run my hand down it, and where it feels sticky or where my eye's drawn to, I'll look at that candidate first. If you're concerned you might be fooling yourself with that, turn the list upside down. That way you can't have read what's on there before your intuition told you what was there. You also might look at coincidences showing up. Maybe something just drawn to you, or something happened in a dream today and it came up in one of these people. Okay, so now you've picked out someone you think, hey, this might be my ideal candidate. You've got to evaluate them. Now, obviously, you could go through their resume, you could give a test. Those things will take time. You can use various intuitive tools. You can imagine the two chairs method. You imagine you are on a stage, and they are on the stage with you, and two chairs facing each other, and then you check out, hey, what part of them is there? Do they have feet? Do they have heads? Are they looking at me? Is there anything else weird I notice about them? So that gives you intuitive information. Often people are not looking at you. They're not like paying attention. That's a clue that they're not really focused on this job. You can visualize a joy graph and a profit graph for the candidate. You can say, okay, how much profit is this person going to give me in my business over the next year, the next 2 years? And then you look at what you imagine the graph is, and is it going up? Does it go up and down? Maybe the graph only goes for 6 months and then disappears, which is a clue that the person either died or quit. Probably quit, but you don't know. I've had employees die while they've been working for me. It's kind of entertaining. But I'd rather know that intuitively. I'd rather know that ahead of time before I hire them. Because if they're going to quit, it's better I know, hey, they're only going to be with me this amount of time. Can I make money on them or not? You might do handwriting analysis, which is called graphology. I've done that for hiring. That's shown a lot of interesting stuff. I avoided hiring. I used to hire people who were like drama creators. You know, has anyone ever had someone who's into drama in your office? No? None of you have ever hired an employee? Yes, a few of you. It's a real drag for the team and you. So after I started, this is how I started getting into this. So I'd analyze the handwriting and eliminate people who had personality issues. Because the way a company is, typically a company works like a family dynamic, right? You're probably aware that other people's families have really weird dynamics, right? Probably our own families have it too, right? A company emulates that. You are basically the father or mother figure in your company, and then the other people are other members of the family. And if they have a father issue, they are going to project it onto you. So you want to avoid that kind of situation. And now, how do we get this come back? Come back! Okay, Martin, we're going to have to do some magic on the laptop. Temperature or
Magic passwords?
it's just password?
No. Yeah, I wish.
Team Crockle.
Thank you. You might also see if you get a body reaction. You know how sometimes when you're around people, like you get a pain in your body or your gut hurts, or you get a headache or whatever. When you're interviewing people or looking through a resume, see if you get anything in your body. That could be intuitive info. Okay, so you've picked out someone, you want to interview them. You want to have a great interview because you're selling the company to them as well as them selling themselves working for your company. So I would recommend you connect to the light, you connect them to the light, you visualize your hearts are connected together. Maybe you do some meeting magic, which means you visualize how the meeting is going to go and see the room being filled with light and having whatever the intention is, that hey, we have a great conversation, we find out is this a good fit. Maybe we have some fun in the conversation, whatever intention you want to set for it. And then you'll have a better interview. But these are all techniques I use in sales as well as interviews. They're great for connecting. Okay, so now you've interviewed them, you're thinking, yeah, I want to hire this person, but what am I going to offer them? So you can use your intuition to find out how much would they be happy in the offer. I've done this. Sometimes I found out people would be prepared to take less than I thought I was going to have to offer. And I offered the amount my intuition said, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. So maybe it's not just money. Often job offers are not just money. There's vacation or other variables, that get thrown in there. So you can find that out. Another way to find out how much money someone's prepared to take or be happy taking is to write down a list of numbers and see which number is sticky. So you can find that out. That's a great way to find out what offer to make. Okay, you've got good at this hiring, you've got to do it faster. The other thing I suggest you do is always be hiring. Don't wait until you have someone quit and then you have to fill the thing. Have a Rolodex, have a list of ideal candidates who you've told them, hey, yeah, you'd be a good fit for my company. I don't have a position open now. Is it okay to stay in touch? And then when you have a position open, you can contact all those different people and say, hey, we've got a position open now. Do you want to come work for us? That makes it a lot less stressful on you. And you can use your intuition to see who would be a potential good fit when you're seeing LinkedIn things or meeting people at networking events or conferences. Okay, so here are some resources. I sent a message to the DC Lisbon Facebook group with this Prezzo. So you have the Prezzo and you have these links. Here are some resources. Best hiring websites, good, bad, and the ugly. That's a list of about 30 different hiring websites you can use. There's some interesting ones in there. That Gates method, there's a sample document that has like a 6-stage Gates process there. There are some audios and videos. There's a breakdown of a job ad that a DCer Willow did, and why it was good and why it wasn't good, and how to improve it. Also, we did some work with her on hearing a hiring scar. So a hiring scar is where you hire someone crap, and now you're kind of gun-shy about hiring again, because you don't want to repeat the same mistake. And then some podcast interviews with Neil Napier and Matt Singers. They're both, Neil Napier co-founded JobRack, which is a great hiring website. Matt Singers has hired more than 1,000 people. He's a real expert at hiring. Link to the Gorilla Guide. Has anyone used this, Gorilla Guide to Interviewing by Joe Spolsky? It was written for hiring developers, but it really works for hiring anyone. It's got a lot of great tips. That's where that hell yes thing came from. And then I put a copy of chapter 3 of my intuitive hiring book, which is all about intuitive leadership book. Then chapter 3 is all about intuitive hiring. So that gives you a lot more details on these things if you think any of these methods would be cool. And also I have a podcast. So, conclusion. Try out some of these intuitive methods. It doesn't, you don't have to use all of them. If one of them was like, yeah, I could try that on my next hire, try that out. See what happens. And if you're a little unsure and you're doubting your intuition, you can kind of run both the practical methods you currently run and your intuition, and keep like a record of what your intuition was telling you and what the resume told you, and then compare it a month or two later and see which one gave you good info. So, you kind of do that as a training wheels thing. All right, I think it's time for a quick Q&A. And how much time do we have, Mr. Tao? I don't see where Tao went. Yes. He ran already out. But let's take any questions people have. Yes.
I have a question, but I just wanted to give a quick pause after the resources.
Yes.
The Tropical MBA podcast where you play, I thought it was one of the best I've heard.
Thank you. I will add that in.
Yeah, please do. And I wanted to ask you, do you do referral checking? Do you believe in it?
Yes. Yeah, I do that. So he asked, do I do referral checking, references? So I'll ask people for references, but I also research references they didn't give me. So most good candidates will give you references that are going to say good things about them. And when you call them, first of all, a lot of employers don't even bother calling references. Okay, so number one thing is you actually call them. The second thing is you've got to listen to what people don't say, because very rarely will references badmouth the candidate, but sometimes, often they will just not speak to something, and you've got to be able to hear what they don't say as much as what they do say. And then, yeah, if you can, look in their LinkedIn and figure out who their boss was, or just ask one reference for another reference, then you may get more candid information. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you apply the same techniques for outsourcing, let's say a designer?
For hiring contractors?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There's no difference in the hiring between hiring a contractor and an employee other than how long-term they are and the legal relationship. Probably they're going to be integrated into your team and they're doing important work for your company.
Yeah. Anything you would do different?
Not as far as the hiring. I mean, your job ad is going to be different because you're putting it on a different site. But some of those websites are listed like Fiverr and Upwork are contracting sites. They're not really employment sites. So, no, I don't. I mean, you're forming a different relationship. It's kind of the difference between getting married and having a casual date.
Hopefully follow the
Hopefully several dates, right? All right. I saw a hand somewhere. Louise. No? Let's take someone else and we'll come back to you if there's anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about a probation period when you hire someone with an aim for like a long-term employment? Do you do any kind of like 1, 2, 3 month
I have,
getting to know you period, or is
I have. So you're asking about should I have a probation period. I have done probation periods. What I found for myself is I find it really hard to fire someone after they've been working on a probation period. So what I've done instead more recently is give them like a test. So I'll pay them for like a week's work, give them something realistic to do, or a day's work, or whatever whatever chunk of work you can tell it, are they any good and do they get on with other people? And it's paid. So that's sort of like a test, but it's a lot clearer that it's not a permanent thing. All right, you had another question?
Yeah, do you have any unique sources you found that are great for finding employers?
Those resources, that resource document of good, bad, and indifferent job websites, that lists some really good resources in there.
Okay.
So an example would be using subreddits for the topic. That was one really good one.
How do you handle terminations?
How do I handle terminations? Okay, if they did something like they're going to steal from me or they're violent against another employee, they just go immediately. If they're doing something where their performance is poor, I will tell them verbally and in writing, hey, this is what's bad. You need to fix it within this time period, say it's a month. If it's really crappy, I'll like cut their pay by 10% and say, hey, you're going to be let go at the end of the month. So I kind of give them a disciplinary review that makes it serious. At that point, I would say about 10 or 20% of them improve, and the other 80% quit. And I generally, when I've had it, I do all subcontractors now, so I don't deal with employees. But when I did have employees, I would much prefer to have them quit, because in the United States, when someone quits, you don't have the legal issues of a lawsuit or unemployment insurance. When you terminate, they can try and sue you, and they definitely can claim unemployment insurance.
So also, like, say for example, using a contractor, and I personally don't have this problem, but I know other people that have had the issue where they go to terminate a contract and they feel that maybe it's not necessary to be really clear about why you're ending the relationship. Do you think that's necessary, or would you say it's just a waste of time and just see you later?
I think from the contractual point of view, it doesn't matter. But from the human point of view, I would definitely tell them, I would give them feedback. I mean, shit, I go to a hotel that's good, I tell them they're good, and if they're crappy, I tell them they're crappy. So why would I not do that with a contract? I mean, a hotel's, what, a few $100s, right? A contractor, I may have spent $10,000 with them. And probably I would try, assuming I think there's a chance that they can improve, I'd want them to, tell them ahead of time, hey, you're doing great here, but here and here need to change. And depending on how that conversation went or how they performed, either I keep them or I let them go. But yeah, I wouldn't just fire someone. I mean, how do you want to be dealt with? Would you like a customer of yours to just stop working with you and then they don't return your phone calls? Or would you rather they say, look, this isn't working, here's why? All right, I think that's it. So I don't know where we're having lunch, but I think it is lunchtime, and I think there was 2 hours allocated for lunch. I don't know if that's still accurate, but let's assume it is. Thank you.